I know your home league drafts were months away, but it is officially redraft season and we're kicking it off with our way too early top 30 running back rankings and putting them into tiers. And we have 5 tiers for you, and we want to be honest. These aren't the official fellas redraft tiers, right? We haven't finished our full projections. This is just preliminary, where we're at to start. And if you're watching on YouTube, it shouldn't be much of a shock to see Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs in the S tier. It feels pretty self-explanatory. Ty, if you're looking at these two guys, I assume it's like 1A, 1B. Do you lean one way or another between these two? Is it just going to go Bijan Gibbs for you, or are you going to flip-flop back and forth?
Honestly, it's just coin flip because I don't think you can go wrong with either of these guys. Both guys are the workhorse in their offense. Gibbs has had the touchdown success, so if you like touchdowns, I'm not going to argue against going with Gibbs over Bijan because Bijan has had the Tyler Algier problem, but maybe you see the upside with Bijan that like he is actually like the for sure 101, that he is going to be RB1 this year because he doesn't have the Tyler Algier problem anymore. Whatever, you can look at this in so many different ways, but ultimately, like you said, these two guys are the 101 and the 102. There is no question about it.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to have the conversation with Jamar Chase, maybe, but as far as running backs go, it does feel pretty clear. You have the youth, which we'll talk about in the next tier of why, the running back 1 and 2 in half PPR formats aren't in this S tier. It has youth has to do with it. Team situation has only gotten better as far as volume of work these guys are going to get. Gibbs coming off 1,800 total yards, Bijan coming off 2,200 total yards. And like you said, Gibbs just destroyed it with the touchdowns, another 18 touchdown season. So it's really hard to bet against these guys. They both catch passes. They're explosive. They score touchdowns. There's nothing not to like about them. Moving on to that A tier. Like I said, CMC was the running back 1 overall last season, half PPR. Jonathan Taylor was 2. We have them a little bit lower. CMC, yeah, I mean, you know the story at this point. We're betting on a guy who's missed multiple 12-plus games in a season. Is going to be 29, almost 30. That's why we move him to the A tier. I mean, I'm still taking him, at least in the top 6 picks in every draft. It's not like I'm saying I'm out on CMC. Ty, what are your concerns? Because I look at Christian McCaffrey last year and I see he only had 3.9 yards per carry, but 102 receptions. Now they bring in Mike Evans. Are you worried about a CMC fall off at all? Or is it kind of like, as long as he's healthy and out there, he's a top five back?
I mean, I think the track record kind of speaks for itself. Whenever McCaffrey is healthy, he is Kyle Shanahan's go-to guy. Everything is built off of the run in San Francisco. And like you said, the receiving work that he gets on top of it, no matter who's in that wide receiver room, like he was still getting receiving work with Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, right? So it doesn't matter that, yes, Mike Evans is a much different wide receiver than what San Francisco has had in the past. I mean, Jawan Jennings is the closest thing to Mike Evans. So this is going to be a completely different type of pass catching group that Brock Purdy is going to be able to throw to. But as long as Christian McCaffrey is healthy, like Kyle Shanahan is going to force feed him the ball. And so you can look at efficiency and all that kind of stuff, but it feels like we missed the point if the efficiency is what pulls you away from McCaffrey, because it's never really been about efficiency. It's just because the guy just gets the most touches of anyone at the running back position.
Yeah, I mean, his last 2 healthy years in San Francisco, 2,000 total yards. And last season was a down year with touchdowns with only 17. Back in 2023, he had 21 total touchdowns. So
imagine that it's a down year with 17 touchdowns.
Exactly. Another guy who scores major touchdowns is Jonathan Taylor this year. He had 20 last year, his second 20 touchdown season in his career. Taylor's a little interesting, right? Because we're out of the receiving work now. It was a career year receiving wise last season, but it's not. We're talking 45 receptions rather than CMC had 100. Gibbs and Bijan are up pushing 80. So we're in a different tier here. How much does this is his third? He had back-to-back 300 touch seasons. Daniel Jones has the Achilles. How much is that all weighing into your great or your rank of Jonathan Taylor? You have him at 4, I have him at 5. How much does that weigh into not putting him in the S tier? Would you put him in the S tier even if Daniel Jones was healthy? Like, how does that all like that whole situation weigh in on you?
You can't ignore the fact that after the bye week, Jonathan Taylor only scored 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Compared to the 15 that he scored on the ground before their bye week. Obviously, like you said, Daniel Jones's injury doesn't really help things out just because it seemed like teams were just selling out to stop the run, especially after Daniel Jones was officially out then. But I am going to trust the process a bit with this and just see that, hey, Indianapolis will rely and lean on Jonathan Taylor. Everything, again, goes through him in that offense, similar to McCaffrey. But like Jonathan Taylor thrives off, I when I say he thrives, that's where we see the peak top 3 finish, maybe even running back 1 overall, because it was him and McCaffrey for most of last year. He will reach those ceilings when this offense is fully functioning, right? You establish a good run game, you can work the play action to keep defenses guessing, and then Jonathan Taylor, when defenses are tired or it's towards the end of the game, that's where Jonathan Taylor can pick up some chunk plays and find the end zone to close out games and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to continue to trust that, but I'm cautious enough with JT just because we know what Achilles injuries can do for quarterbacks. I think this is going to be the great debate all offseason long of what kind of Daniel Jones are we going to be getting back? If we're not going to be getting the Daniel Jones that we got from last year, does that impact JT's ceiling? And I think that does. That's my early answer is yes right now. So that's why I keep him in here in the A tier, which is still very high. He's still a top 5 guy for me, but I don't know if the ceiling, like I said, is that running back 1, running back 2, where he was at last year before everything kind of went to the wayside.
Mm-hmm. And James Cook, who's also in this tier, is a good example for me for JT to kind of temper my expectations. Cook had a fantastic season last year. He had 1,600 rushing yards. He had 300 receiving yards. He had 14 touchdowns. Yeah, he scored 3.2 half PPR fantasy points less per game than Jonathan Taylor. Right? Jonathan Taylor, when you're not getting that same insane receiving work, needs 20 touchdowns to keep pace with the elite, like the top 2 guys, right? I mean, he's going to keep pace with this tier. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that it's going to fall off, but you need to have these insane amount of touchdowns. And like you said, it's a little worrisome having Daniel Jones coming back off the Achilles tear. Is that going to be the case, or are they just going to sell out? We know he's going to get the volume. Injury risk is obviously higher coming off the amount of carries he's had over the last 3 seasons, pushing over 900. So it's just you're factoring all that into. I'm just going to temper my expectations a little bit. And also for me, this next guy, Devon Achane, Ty, I'm hot and bothered. Clearly. I am. I got him. I got him out of my running back 3 right now. I'm envisioning. I know you're saying, oh, it's Miami, Cameron. He's not going to score touchdowns. I mean, he had 12 last year. I'm envisioning CMC on the Panthers when he was healthy this next season. That's what I'm seeing for Devon Achane. Maybe not that's right. CMC had 413 fantasy points, half PPR fantasy points in a season. I'm not saying we hit that. CMC had 120 receptions in a season. I'm not saying we hit that. But name another player on the Dolphins that strikes any fear into you. You can't. Right? It has to run through Devon. Everything they do has to go through him. And then they went out and paid him $17 million a year. So the contract tells me, all right, we understand he's our entire offense. He is so unbelievably dynamic with the ball in his hands. He's a guy I think could be pushing 100 receptions this year. So even if he's at 10, 13 touchdowns, which I don't think is out of the realm of possibilities when he's probably going to touch the ball 20 times a game, that he could finish up in this top 3. I mean, he was already running back 5 last season, so it's not like this is a top, a super hot take or by any means, but I think we could be talking about him in the S tier starting next season. That's where I'm at with Devon Achane.
I think there's definitely a world where that happens. I think the two things that are the two boxes that I need to check off until I can officially jump on the bandwagon with you. One is what is the receiving work going to actually look like?
Yep.
Because I think a great example is actually Bijan from last year, where Bijan only had 10 touchdowns, but he had 100 targets and he had almost 80 receptions. If we get close to those kind of numbers in the receiving game, like you said with Christian McCaffrey all the way back in like 2018, 2019 in Carolina, then it does give me some more hope that like, yeah, he could ultimately push that S tier. And if things do seem to go in the right direction for Miami year one with this new regime and new coaching staff and all that stuff. But that leads me into the second box that I will need to check is the touchdowns. Like Bijan was still able to finish running back 3 in points per game last year with just 10 touchdowns. But again, it's because he got an insane amount of touches, right? We know that, or I should say this, we feel fairly confident that Devon Achane is going to get an insane amount of touches because, like you said, there is no one else on this team that strikes fear in a defense, right? But if we're closer to 7, 8 touchdowns instead of being closer to 10, 11 touchdowns, that can make a big enough difference, right? Where you're not going to be disappointed by what Achane gives you, but his finish is going to be closer to 10 than it is to 5. And if you draft him with expectations of he will end the year as a top 3 guy, you're going to feel disappointed, even though it really wasn't a disappointment considering everything that's going on in Miami and all that stuff. So I like Achane, again, still in my A tier. He's my running back 6, just because I've got to actually like sit down, crunch the numbers a bit and go, is he actually going to meet these thresholds of receiving work and touchdowns to warrant being that top 5 guy? And like you said, having the upside to push into that S tier in that top 3 at the position.
Definitely. James Cook, we'll talk about briefly. For me, honestly, I'd consider to put him in the B tier. You had him a little higher, so I left him here. Just because it felt like last season was the ceiling for James Cook of 309 carries, 1,600 rushing yards. Just because with Josh Allen, you're not going to get the receiving work. That's what it comes down to for me, right? You're always going to be capped at that. I don't know if he sees 300 carries again. His previous career high was 230. So if that could, you could look at that both ways of, okay, he's progressed to this. He's earned this. They're going to keep giving it to him. Or last year was the anomaly. They bring it back down a little bit. I think you can look at it both ways. I'm fine with him being here. I think he's, for me, if I had to pick a guy to drop into that next year, it's James Cook, but I still view him as a top 8 running back, at the end of the season, right? Like, I still think his floor is top 10. So it's, again, nitpicking because we're talking about the top 6. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on James Cook. Like, do you think we get a magical season from him where he's the top of this tier, or is he just going to be one of these guys where it's like, no, this is where he sits all off season, doesn't really move?
I think this is a perfectly fine spot for James Cook. There is a thought in my head that if you do believe that he's a top 5 guy at the position, you think that he's closer to 20 touchdowns than he is to 15 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And I think that 15 is just kind of the sweet spot. Yes, he had 16 and 2 receiving in 24. He had 12 this past year in 2 receiving. So he was closer to 20 in 2024. And he was closer to 15 in 2025, and Cook finished running back 6 in points per game. And I kind of feel like we're on a track to repeat the finish at least. It may look different, but I feel like we're on track to kind of get this repeat where I think we just know what we're getting with James Cook at this point. Like you said, with Josh Allen, you're not really going to get a whole lot of receiving work. So you better rack up the carries and you better make the most of them when you get into the red zone. And that's what James Cook has done for the past 2 years.
Yeah, for sure. And anything we said negatively about these 6 guys, again, is nitpicking. Like, there's a reason they're in the top 6, right? So I just want to keep that in everybody's mind. Before we move on to the B tier, I just want to remind you, we have fantasy football content coming out all season long, 2 episodes a week. I'm gonna be on dad duty coming up here pretty soon, so I might not be
Yeah.
on as many episodes, but by the time we get back into the season, by the time July, August come around, I'll be back in on the episodes. But Ty and Lucas are not going to sleep. They are going to be nonstop for you guys moving forward. I mean, I won't be sleeping either. I guess it's
I was gonna say, so
focus on
it'll
fantasy
be
football.
it'll be a competition to see who sleeps the least between Lucas and I and Cam.
There we go. But yeah, so just make sure if you want more fantasy football content, hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications as well, so you don't miss out. The B tier is I think our second biggest tier. So we got a lot: Marion Hampton, Saquon Barkley, Ashton Genty, Chase Brown, Derrick Henry, Ken Walker, Jeremiah Love, and Josh Jacobs. And some people are going to look at this tier, and honestly, I think most people watching are going to look at this tier and be angry, or maybe a little peeved. But it's going to be for all different reasons, right? It's going to be for, why do you have Genty ahead of Derrick Henry? Why do you have Jeremiah Love in here when he's a rookie? Why is Josh Jacobs so low? Why is Hampton so, I think there's enough in here with these guys that everyone's going to be like, what the heck? Like, why, why are you even, but everybody has their justification. I feel like I feel pretty solid about this. Hampton's a guy I'm higher on than you, Ty. I have him all the way at 6. You have him at 9. And for me, really, with Hampton, what it comes down to is we saw good receiving work from him last year. I know they brought in Keaton Mitchell this year, and I should say in spurts, right? He only played 5 games, and then was out and played 4 more games. But when he was in, he looked not amazing. But you got to remember, Rashawn Slater, Joe Alt, both were out last season. But he looked pretty decent. Now you bring in Mike McDaniel, who, for me, this is what gets me excited, is the run scheme with Mike McDaniel is going to just, I think, take this Chargers offense to the next level. He's him and Kyle Shanahan are 2 of the best by far at scheming up run plays and running the ball. So that's what gets me excited about Hampton. Plus, we saw that they trusted him last year, obviously took him with a high enough pick. Am I kind of blowing smoke on Hampton here, or do you think there's actual flames behind behind some of it?
I think I lean more that there are, where there's smoke, there's fire, right? Like we're not just, like you said, we're not blowing smoke. We're not making this up. Like all the moves from this offseason that the Chargers have made do point to Marion Hampton producing in fantasy, at least. I think the thing that could potentially hold somebody back is just that, well, I haven't seen it before. He's only played 9 games. When we have guys like Saquon, Chase Brown, Derrick Henry, Kenneth Walker, Josh Jacobs in this tier, I've seen those guys do it before. And maybe I'm just more bullish on one of their offenses than I am on the Chargers. Or it could be also a little scared off by Keaton Mitchell. I'm a little scared off by Kamani Vidal still sticking around somehow, some way. Like, there are arguments to be made for Hampton not taking the jump just yet. But I also just have to remind people, like, again, we're talking about Keaton Mitchell. We're talking about Kamani Vidal. We're talking about first-round draft pick Marion Hampton, who was, if not for Ashton Genty, was like going to be the runaway running back 1 in that class. So there are arguments to be made, but ultimately you should just trust that talent is going to win out.
For sure. And you and Lucas talked about him and Genty last week, so we won't spend too much more time on these young guys. Genty, real quick, I want to know, right, because people were disappointed last season because we drafted him too high. What's the ceiling this year for Ashton Genty? Like, can he be an S tier guy? Is he gonna be James Cook? Is he gonna, is this tier his ceiling? What truly do you think the tier or the ceiling is for Ashton Genty?
I kind of get like a Chase Brown vibe a little bit, where I don't I'm still not completely sold that we're going to see a monster jump in touchdowns. I do think we do finish with double digit touchdowns,
That
which
would be
is
nice.
certainly a it's progress,
Mhm.
right? But there is a part of me that isn't so sold on Genty being this 400 touch type of running back that I think a lot of
Mhm.
people are still holding the expectation for. This is very similar to just like, hey, who else outside of Brock Bowers, right? Like, who else is there that Vegas can really like give the ball to or is as dynamic as Ashton Genty, which is a very fair argument to make. But I've also seen track record with Clint Kubiak. I've
Mhm.
also seen, how, let's just say, like, how bad things were last year. That if the expectation, again, is from going from bottom of the barrel to among the league leaders
Yeah.
in just overall offensive productivity and efficiency and all that kind of stuff, I feel like we could be setting ourselves up for some more disappointment. And I think Genty can have a really solid season. I think he can have a really good season where it is progress from where from what it was last year, but the expectations haven't changed. And if he doesn't meet the expectations, it'll feel like a disappointment. So ultimately, like it's not that I don't hate. It's not that I don't, or no, sorry. It's not that I hate Genty by any means, but I do wonder. I feel like there's still a connotation that, hey, he has running back one overall upside this year. I don't know if I can get there just yet.
So for me, I think he could crack the top 5. I do. Because I think he could get enough receiving work too. Do I think it's likely? No. So that's where I'm at with Genty. Is I think he's gonna end up in this tier. I think this is where you should be drafting him. He's going running back 6 right now in underdog drafts, and I struggle taking him
It's
there
a
in the end of the
little
first
rich.
round. Just because I think a lot of these guys in this tier are going to be very similar to him this season. But yeah, and then the other guy I want to talk about too in this group is Jeremiah Love, because right, he is what Genty was last season, but now we're drafting him running back 13 over on Underdog. We have him running back 13 in our rankings. Are we too like? Have we just been scared off of Bijan wasn't quite what we were hoping he was going to be his rookie year, and then Genty wasn't like? Are we being too scared, or are we finally just getting smart on rookie running backs on really bad teams? Just need a little bit to get going, a little more help.
Which I feel like it's kind of in some ways it both. It's kind of both. Like I think there is a bit of a lesson learned just because we've been burned by Bijan, we've been
Mhm.
burned by Genty, like you said. I do also think that hit the only I shouldn't say the only difference, but the difference between Love's situation, right, going into the draft, ultimately being taken by Arizona at number 3. There's a lot of Cardinals hate
Mhm.
that Bijan didn't get when the Falcons took him or when Genty got taken by the Raiders. There was not the same amount of hate for the Raiders as everyone is likely still giving the Cardinals. So I do think in some way the reason why he's going later, that he's ranked, like you said, running back 13 over on Underdog. He's running back 13 for us. I let me just put us aside for a second. The running back 13 ranking is because people are just so down on the Cardinals, but it like at season's end, people are going to go, look, we learned our lesson. It's like, well, not really. Some of us did. Um, but ultimately for like running back 13 in our rankings, at least for me, I still have a running back 12, but it's just more so like I'm just not sure exactly how it's going to look. I'm just not I'm not I don't have a clear picture in my mind. Like Jeremiah Love could be, 200 carry guy with 70 receptions, pushing 300 touches, which would be great. And then he's probably pushing closer to running back 8 territory at that point just because of volume, right? Um, So ultimately, again, like I'm still keeping him here just because I don't have a clear picture of what things look like. And the guys ranked ahead of him, I'm outside of probably Hampton and Genty, I know what I'm getting with those
Yeah.
guys.
It it does feel like this is one of the more solid redraft running back groups that we've had in a while. It feels like, I'm talking when I'm looking at this range, I'm thinking these guys are probably most of them going to finish between 14 and 16 half PPR fantasy points a game next season. That's a really good rookie season for Jeremiah Love. It's just for me, there happens to be so many good players in this tier that it's like, okay, do I really want to rank him noticeably ahead of Derrick Henry? No. Like, he could be phenomenal this year and still finish behind Derrick Henry, right? That's within the range of outcomes. So for me, that's what it's really come into. I'm sure I'm going to rise on Jeremiah Love. I fall for the fast home run hitting young guys at the running back position constantly. So I'm sure you talk to me later and he's gonna be like my running back 8. So I'm not.
Mhm.
This is not a final by any means, but yeah, I do think we're just being cautious, but at the same time, it's maybe we're being too cautious. So I guess that'll play out real quick. We'll finish with Kenneth Walker because I think he's the most interesting one in this tier to me. But between Saquon, Derrick Henry, and Josh Jacobs, if you had to pick, well, let's just do a keep, trade, cut on them. So you have to keep one, trade one, cut one. Or you can think of it as just, who do I think is going to be the best, second best, third best? Like, who do I think has the opportunity to finish top of the A tier? Who do I think has the best chance of finishing in this B tier? And who do I think has the best chance of falling off the cliff this season? So I guess if you had to rank those three in those terms, how would you put those three?
Between Ken Walker, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, or
Saquon,
Saquon Henry.
Saquon, Henry, and Jacobs. So the guys who are all 28 plus.
Gotcha. I think guy that has the best chance of finishing in the A tier is Saquon. Guy that has the best chance of finishing in this B tier is Josh Jacobs.
Ooh, all right.
And the guy that has the best chance, and when I say the best chance, he just has the greater chance among the three of finishing in the C tier. It is Derrick Henry. I know that all three of these guys aren't necessarily like the stud receiving type of backs just because of Saquon being in Philly, Jacobs being the type of runner that he is. Same with Derrick Henry. I'm not like, how do I say this? It's not that I'm not sold on Baltimore and where they're going at this point, but this is going to be a different Baltimore.
Yeah. You have more
offense.
questions than you've ever had in the last, 5 years with Baltimore?
Totally. Like I've got, it's one of those things where I'm going to be asking myself constantly throughout the summer, do I think Baltimore can be a top 5 offense in the league? And I feel like there are going to be some days where I'm going to say yes, just because, again, you have Lamar Jackson. You still have Derrick Henry in your backfield. Zay Flowers going into year 4. Mark Andrews is still around. Like, there are still some pieces here in this Baltimore offense, but this is not a Todd Monken offense. This isn't like, the rugged Baltimore style offense that we're so used to seeing. This is a Declan Doyle offense who's coming over from Chicago most recently. So there will be days, like I said, where I'll say, yes, Baltimore can be a top 5 offense. There may be some days, there probably will be some days where I'm like, I don't know if Baltimore's going to be top 5. They might be closer to middle of the pack, maybe closer to top 10, which is still really good. But for Derrick Henry's sake, right, for a guy that doesn't get a ton of receptions, he thrives on touchdowns. He needs touchdowns. He should still get those. But are we talking 15 plus? Are we talking 10 to 14 touchdowns? Like, that's going to be the big question that I have to ask about Baltimore all offseason long. So that's how I see it right now. Josh Jacobs, again, is the most like steady Eddie. The most cookie cutter. This is exactly what I'm getting type of guy in among the three here. There's some variance with Saquon and Derrick Henry, but you could ask me this tomorrow, and I might say Josh Jacobs goes down Derrick Henry stays. But that's just my leaning right now.
Yeah, I'm betting on all three this season. I think they're all three going to be solid. If I had to order them, I'd go the same. And Derrick Henry falling off is strictly because he's 32 years old and he's as
It's
big
also
as he
fair.
is. Like, it's just, I mean, you're pushing 250 and you're just taking hits that he does over and over again. Like, at some point, you'd think it slows down. I'm not, like I said, I'm not betting against him this year. I'm just saying I know that that's in the realm of possibilities for him. So he could play to 35 and still be doing the same thing, and I wouldn't be shocked at this point. So I've learned my lesson the last 4 seasons of trying to bet against Derrick Henry for getting old. I'm not going to do that anymore. But yeah, you just have to recognize where he's at. Ken Walker is one where obviously he's on the Chiefs, but at the same time with Ken Walker, we've never seen him finish on a season inside the top 15. So obviously he's been banged up. Last season was his first full season, but he was the running back 22. He's never had 1,100 rushing yards in a season. He's never had double-digit rushing touchdowns. He's, again, been sharing the backfield this whole time. But Ty, is he unlocked in this Chiefs offense? Like, is this a guy you should be taking at all costs at the running back 10 price tag right now? Where do you land on Ken Walker? Are you like, you take him and you're going, I got my running back one, I'm set. I'm feeling good. Or are you feeling a little shaky if he's your running back one?
I think this is tough because I think you have to state the obvious. So the last time that Kansas City had a running back of this caliber, I'll say, was Kareem Hunt before all of the off the field stuff kind of derailed all of that. When Kareem Hunt was a thing in this Kansas City offense, it was really good. Like it was something that you coveted. And it was, I mean, it also helps playing alongside Patrick Mahomes and all of that. But being a top 5 back, I mean, who doesn't want a top 5 back, right? I do think that there are a good amount of people that are kind of just blindly drafting Kenneth Walker right now, though, where he's going at running back, what is it, 9 right now over on Underdog, because they just see Ken Walker, dynamic player in Kansas City that absolutely has to work. And I'm not going to sit here and say that it's not going to work. But without proper framework, without proper context as to why you're taking Ken Walker, could ultimately costing you a little bit. I'm not saying that Ken Walker is also like, I feel like Ken Walker, low end running back 1, high end running back 2 type of player this year. Yeah, he can have some ceiling games where he, breaks off the big one and then he houses it, and then we're all going, yeah, that's why we're taking Ken Walker as high as he was going. But I maybe the best way to say it is this: I just don't have a clear picture yet of what this Kansas City offense will look like until I've got a clearer picture on the Patrick Mahomes timeline. If he's back, then I've got some hope, at least, because again, you've got competent quarterback play to kind of take pressure off of you from, or take defensive pressure off of Ken Walker then. But I wonder if there's a legit chance that, hey, it's going to be a slower start to the season because Mahomes isn't playing, defenses are just going to try to take away Ken Walker.
Yeah, I don't know. I need to see it a little bit more. He's a guy who's really had over the last couple of years of high stuff rate, and he's banking on a home run kind of player. And I just don't know how much I trust that. Again, you're in Kansas City. I could look silly for being cautious on him. I get that, and that's probably what I'm most worried about. Lucas says it all the time of I'd rather be wrong hoping that a guy's good than wrong sitting out because I'm, pessimistic on a guy. That might be me this season with Ken Walker. So I'm probably going to be a little bit lower when I'm looking at my best ball teams. I'm probably going to have less of him. But it's just, I don't want to get overexcited about a Kansas City offense that just hasn't looked good over the last couple of seasons, that all of a sudden, they just figured it out. And maybe Ken Walker is the answer. Maybe I'm just I think he's a fantastic running back. I don't know for fantasy perspective, we're all of a sudden going to see this, top 7 season from Ken Walker. So that's just where I land on that with him. But again, I am nervous that I'm I'm going to be proven wrong.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog, where you can get into the game this season playing Pick'em. It's extremely simple. Just pick higher or lower on 2 or more of your favorite players. For example, I'll pick the higher on Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Xavier Worthy. If I played $10 and got all 3 of them right, I would win $60 just by watching football. And that's the beauty of Pick'em. You can track your picks and your wins while you enjoy the game. Now, if you're not on Underdog yet, scan the QR code on your screen or use our code FELLAS when you sign up, because new customers will get $50 in bonus funds when you play your first $5 on the app. Plus, Underdog will give you a free pick to use in your first entry. Again, that's code FELLAS over on Underdog. Now let's get you back to the rest of the show.
And we're back, and we're going to jump into the C tier. This is our biggest tier. Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams, Kyron Williams, Breece Hall, Travion Henderson, DeAndre Swift, Bucky Irving, Quinshad Judkins, and Cam Scadaboo. And I don't think we need to spend too much time on, Javonte Williams, on Kyron Williams. We kind of know what they're going to be this season, right? What it's going to look like. Maybe Kyron, you're a little bit nervous on just because they're splitting more with Blake Corum, but at the same time, he still has, he got the contract last season. They're Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford. It's a good offense. He's going to be in this range, and he might be higher. We might still be down on him. DeAndre Swift is in the same boat of, going back into that offense. Real quick on Swift, are you nervous at all that, and I am a little nervous that Kyle Monangai takes over more of a role and really cuts into that workload, or do you think Swift's established enough that he's going to have a consistent role, keeping him, in this late teens range throughout the entire season?
I think it's important to contextualize. The guy did finish running back 15 overall, running back 16 in points per game with 11 touchdowns.
Yep.
No, sorry, 10 touchdowns. 9 of which were on the ground. And Monangai, again, had 170 carries, but he only had 5 touchdowns. So you'll see where we have Monangai ranked. I still have confidence in Swift. Maybe he's not going to have the 10 touchdowns that he got last year. Is there a chance that he could? Yeah, I think so. Just because this Bears offense seems to be, exponentially, or like on this exponential, like upward growth of just like they're absolutely going to take off. But even if Kyle Monangai takes a couple touchdowns away, I do expect Swift to still be the 1A guy here, where he is going to get majority of touches. And what I saw last year is that in this system with this offensive line, albeit some changes, like 4.9 yards per carry, 8.8 yards per reception. Like, the dude was efficient. And as long as we continue to see 250-ish touches, if not a little more, like, Swift is going to at least produce enough to still be a top 20 running back in fantasy football. So I agree with you from the standpoint of, like, I do expect Monangai to probably get some of those touches that were going to Swift last year, but I don't think that there's going to be enough of them where it's going to be a full-on pendulum swing where Monangai is going to be the guy that you want over Swift. I think if that ever happens, it's probably another year or so out, because again, I just think Swift I think he's gotten better ever since Ben Johnson said, "I don't want you," the first time.
Yep.
He's gotten better over the years, and Ben Johnson got him again and goes, actually, I can work with this now. So I'm still in on Swift. I like Swift. I like Underdog right now. The ADP for DeAndre Swift, running back 24.
Yeah.
It is such an easy pick for me because I'm like, I know how good the Chicago offense can be. I don't care that it could be an annoying thorn in the side with Kyle Monangai. When it comes to best ball, right, because that's what Underdog does, I'm just going to take the offense. And I know that DeAndre Swift is going to produce enough to be better than the running back 24 this year.
For sure. I'm 4 spots lower than you, and he's still a value for me according to my rankings right now. So I'm at running back 22. He's going at 24. So I do agree there. Travis Etienne, Kamara, there's been more news that maybe Kamara is open to playing alongside Etienne. How does that scare you? How much does that scare you? And then I guess, Kelton Moore is going to get brought up in the fact that his last great running back was Saquon at 2,000 yards. Obviously, we don't expect Travis Etienne to be the running back one overall, but do you look at him as a guy that you wouldn't be shocked if we're talking about him even at the top of the B tier next season?
It would not surprise me at all. It really wouldn't. But because this is not Saquon Barkley, let's get that out of the way. And if I'm not mistaken, did Saquon have an Alvin Kamara type running back right behind him on the depth chart?
Was it Kenny G?
Was it like that?
Him.
That's the point. Is that like ETN has Alvin Kamara still in this offense?
Yeah,
like you said, if he's or if he's starting to kind of warm up to the idea of playing with ETN, that might hurt just enough, right? Where this does become a bit rich, because I just don't know what receiving work will look like. It wasn't great last year. I just need to say that too. Wasn't great for Kamara before he got hurt. It was not great at all, to the point where Kamara was,
it was brutal.
It was almost droppable. So I think the best way to say it is this: if Kamara doesn't end up playing, ETN probably is going to take a jump in my rankings, at least to get into the B tier. He could finish top of B after everything plays out. But as things stand right now, I feel like this is the right spot for him, where this C tier feels like the most volatile tier of, like, there are guys that could take that jump into the B tier, maybe even push to the top of B. So it's a conversation of, like, could they be bottom of A tier, top of B tier kind of discussion next year. But then there are some guys on here where it's going to be like, actually, they're going to be in the D tier until further notice after this year.
For sure. Breece Hall, it's just the question of how good are the Jets going to be, right? We know he's talented. We know he got paid, but you bring in more pass catchers. Does that help or hurt Breece? I don't know. I'm not excited enough that I'm willing to move him up. He hasn't quite looked like the Breece pre-ACL for the past couple of years, right? It just looks like he's missing that last gear, right? He's like 95% there, but it's that last 5% that would make me go, okay, he's team proof. I don't feel like he is. So I'm gonna keep him in here. Is there anything that would happen this offseason that you'd move him up to B tier? Is there any like path you see that, or is it just kind of he's gonna be a mid-teens kind of guy, and that's just where I'm gonna stand on him? And if I'm a betting man, I'm saying he's not going to finish higher than 15, and he's not going to finish lower than 20. Like that'd be the range I'd put money on Breece right now.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at, is just that, like, I think the state of the offense with Frank Reich severely caps the ceiling, but he's going to get enough volume that you can't just completely erase him. Right. The dude got paid. So you would like to think that, we're going to get Breece
really
to be more of a mainstay. Right. So ultimately, I think the best way to say it, the easiest way to say it, lack of touchdowns are going to hurt him. And he's going to finish somewhere in the teens. He's not going to be a bad pick. I struggle to see what that upside is to being like the top 10 guy that we all had hoped that he could be, or that we have hoped him to be for the past, what feels like 3 seasons.
Yeah. I mean, his cap is he's had 5 rushing touchdowns or less every single season. And they've done nothing to make me think that's going to change this year. Travion Henderson has had a lot more than 5 rushing touchdowns. In fact, he had 3 in one game last season. I'll admit I'm the reason that he is so high. I think he clearly overtakes Ramondre Stevenson this season. I'm all in on Travion. I do think the Patriots could take a step back. Like, I'm not out of the, I'm not like delusional that they're going to be repeating. I understand they have the whole schedule. Obviously, they have a coaching thing going on right now. We don't want to get canceled, so we won't dive into it too much. I'm just kidding.
He really went there.
Like we're big enough to get canceled. But yeah, I really believe in the talent. I think he takes over, and I think the big part of him really taking over is we're going to see that passing volume really come to life. That's what I'm projecting for Travion. That's why I have him so high, and it's more optimism than anything as of right now. So I get if you're against that ties, obviously lower on that. And then the last three guys in this tier: Bucky, Quinshawn, Cam Scadaboo. I feel like we can't have true conversations about any of these three guys until we get further into training camp. Bucky, he's got that shoulder injury that he's not even clear for OTAs yet. Quinshawn Judkins, Cam Scadaboo both had nasty injuries. Scadaboo's was a little bit worse than Judkins at the end of last season, but yeah, those are going to be three that you're going to have to monitor throughout the rest of this, season. It feels like for me, Judkins is the safest of the three just because they have to use him in Cleveland and he was clearly their best back last year. But at the same time, it's clear like safest is a gross term here because he's playing for the Browns. So out of those three, is there anything you want to like point out to the people that you think they should know, or is it just you just kind of got to wait and see what the medicals kind of come back as?
I guess it's kind of wait for the medicals, but I feel like it's more so just like, at least for Judkins and Scadaboo, those feel more like second half of the year bets than anything else.
I like that.
Because if I had to take a swing at who I think is going to be the more productive offense in the second half of the year between the Browns and the Giants, I think it's the Giants.
Yes.
And I think most people do as well. So that's why you're going to see Cam Scadaboo go ahead of Quinshawn Judkins. The problem is that both of them will be going in a range where you're going to be looking at them as your running back 2 right out of the start of the season. And I don't feel great about that. So I think not to get so far off the trail with this comment about draft strategy and whatnot, but I'm going to try to get at least 2 guys in the top 20, maybe even top 15 before I get into this range of players in this C tier, more than likely, where I've got major questions for some of the guys in this tier. Like, I'm not going to have too many questions about Javonte. I'm not going to have too many questions about Swift. Not going to have too many questions about Kyron, but I am going to have questions about Brees. I'm going to have questions about Travion personally. I'm going to have questions about Bucky and Judkins and Scadaboo, right? So I do think, like I said, this is the tier of volatility where these guys are probably going to be going somewhere between round 4 and round 6 in that running back dead zone 2 in your drafts. It's just going to suck that you're going to have to maybe take one of these guys to be your running back 2, where at the start of the year, it's just going to be so gross and it's going to be so bad because there's just too much going into this season that you would not like to have on your mind.
For sure. And for me, Bucky, he's the guy I think has the highest ceiling out of those 3.
Agreed.
But he's also the guy that I think it could go the most awry for. He doesn't look right, he doesn't come back right. Sean Tucker, Kenny Gainwell, really like you have this like gross 3-headed monster that you're dealing with because his shoulder, like the fact he's still not cleared is scaring me. But
it makes me think it's something other than the shoulder.
But if Bucky's healthy, we know how good he is on a good offense, and he could easily be in that B tier. So that's for me. Like Bucky's a guy I've been taking some chances on, especially in best ball. So just to clean that up. And then this last one in the D tier, this for me, I think some of these guys in the C tier we're going to look back and be like, oh, they were running back dead zone. We were a little too high. This is truly a running back dead zone. I mean, this is like, I like Kyle Monangai. Like we've always been Monty fans. Chubba Hubba, Jadarian Price, Ramondre Stevenson, RJ Harvey, Jalen Warren. If you have one of these guys as your running back 2, you're going to be hurting. And you better have some great wide receivers and either a great quarterback or a great tight end. Because, if you're rolling out Monty every week and you're hoping for 11.5 half PPR points, yeah, that's where we're at. Jalen Warren was the best last season out of all these guys, and he barely cracked 12 half PPR points. And now he's got Rico Dowdle, David Montgomery, bad offensive line. Who knows how much Woody Marks, Chuba Hubbard. I don't even know what to make of Chuba Hubbard after everything with Rico and getting hurt last season. Jadarian Price, they're saying is going to split work. Is he actually Ramondre Stevenson? We know he's splitting work. RJ Harvey was kind of like maybe he takes over from J.K. Dobbins, and then they draft Jonah Coleman. Jalen Warren now has the Rico Dowdle problem. So, Ty, if you had a bet on one of these guys to take that step into the C tier where you're like, okay, this was a really good pick in this dead zone, and one of these guys that we're going to look back and go, what were we thinking ever taking him here? What would you take on both sides of that spectrum?
I feel like the guy that we would look back and go, like, how do we not think of this is Jadarian Price.
Yep.
I also think you could maybe give a shout out to RJ Harvey as kind of the dark horse of that answer or for that question. But gosh,
Chuba really feels like, I mean, and I get it. Like, there's nobody else there. It's him and Jonathan Brooks who's barely played.
Yeah.
But after the way it went last season, it does feel like he could be the one where like, what we just decided because, but even then, so like, I just feel like Ramondre is the same way. We kind of know he's on the way out, but at the same time, it could be, he has 185 carries, he scores 9 touchdowns, and like, okay, that was a pretty good pick. It feels gross looking, trying to bet either side for pretty much all these guys. Of the upside case is maybe you're DeAndre Swift. The downside case is, oh, you're irrelevant, and I shouldn't have, used a pick on you here.
Right. Yeah, that's because you can make the same argument for Jalen Warren.
Yep.
Right, with Rico Dowdle now in Pittsburgh, and Rico Dowdle kind of getting his break with Mike McCarthy. A lot of people seem to be forgetting about that. David Montgomery, maybe not as likely, but wear and tear maybe gets to David Montgomery this year for whatever reason, or Houston actually just doesn't figure out their offensive line.
Yeah.
Right. So then that sinks him too. Like there is, how do I say this? Like you said, there isn't a super great ceiling for any of these guys. And some of them have much lower floors than the others. But these guys, maybe outside of Monangai, maybe Montgomery, they don't really have super great floors either, right? So it's just caution. It's being cautious about where you're taking them in drafts, the build of your team, because again, if you have any of these guys, probably outside of, well, even Monangai, I'd even say this. If any of these guys are your running back 2 coming out of your draft, oof, you're going to be hurting.
You better have 0 wide receiver to high heavens and, be stacked at that position. So I agree. And then before we go, if you had to give anybody a shout who's outside the top 30 right now, and you're going, hey, this guy could be a top 20 running back, Jalen Warren last year, Rico Dowdle last season, who would you pick as that kind of guy that you think, okay, I think he could be a top 20 player?
Oh, to be a top 20 player?
Yeah.
Oh,
top 20. Top 20 running back, I'll clarify. We don't think any of these guys will be top 20 players. Top 20 running
back. 20 running backs? Oh, maybe I guess I'm going gross. Tony Pollard.
Ooh. That is gross. You win.
It's not even a competition at this point. I won outright. Just because who else?
Yep.
You know what I mean? And now you get Brian Daboll, who is a substantial upgrade over, who was there? Oh, over Brian Callahan. I don't even remember the play. Yeah, like I don't remember the play caller for the interim, but like Daboll could at least get this offense on the right path in year 1 at least. And maybe this is also just because I don't think that Tyjae Spears, as much as you may like Tyjae Spears, I don't think he's going to be eating too much into that workload. I'm not the biggest Nick Singleton guy. I know a lot of people are. And I think, again, another little hot take for you that has nothing to do with Tony Pollard. I think people are just in on Nick Singleton because they're not high on the two guys ahead of him. That's the only reason why they're high on Nick Singleton then. But I feel like there's potentially a path for Tony Pollard just because he's going to get touches. I'm not going to say he's going to find the end zone a ton, but he's going to get touches.
Yeah, I think the guy who has the best possibility for me is Bashal Tutin. I don't think it's actually going to happen, but just because he's a guy who's going to be in an offense we know was pretty good last season, who has the opportunity to be the lead back and get receiving work.
Yeah.
I'm going to project Chris Rodriguez to be the lead back. I think he's going to get the most of the rushing work. He's going to get goal line carries, but I don't think he's a good enough running back that if Tutin is that guy, that he's going to hold Tutin back. That's the way I'm viewing that. So I'm not projecting Aaron Jones. I'm going to be honest, if he's healthy and Minnesota returns to what we know that offense can be with Kevin O'Connell, could be there. He could be a guy that gets there probably on fantasy points per game. I don't think we get more than 14 games from Aaron Jones at this point in his career. But again, I'm not betting on either of them. It's just guys that could do it. Well, that wraps up for us. Ty and I are going to be back tomorrow. Not tomorrow, on Wednesday, talking about the top 36 wide receivers. So we'll do the same thing, put them into tiers and discuss them then. So make sure you're following along for that. We have record prediction short form videos coming out. Lucas started with the Giants yesterday of when you've watched this. So make sure you tune in for that as well. That should be a fun little series that we're doing over there. You can find that Fantasy Football Fellas on TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, Fantasy Football Fellas Shorts on YouTube. If you want other content, the FFL is on Instagram, FFL is for the main page on Twitter, Camel FFF for me, and Tyler_Plath for Ty over on X. I did that backwards today, so that was crazy.
Pretty seamless though. Pretty seamless.
But that wraps it up for us. So we will see you on Wednesday. Deuces.